Hello everybody, welcome to the next section. In this section, we will learn about form and its attributes like action and method. We will learn all the important inputs that we need in creating one HTML website like text, password, radio, and so on. We will learn about labels and how to use them, and also we will learn about form submit and HTML validation. Before I start, I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the bell button so the next video that will be uploaded you will be notified and you can follow this tutorial. Without losing time, let's go to the code and start learning about forms. About 70 to 80% of tags that we use, combination of them to make our website, we already have learned in previous section. Another important part of the HTML is form. We use form to capture user information, and that information can be used for different things. For example, for login, we use a login form, and that login form capture user login credential that are email and password. We might have contact form that have name, email, subject, and message, and by submitting this form, we are sending the message to admin of the website. Usually, forms are made of series of input fields. For creating form, the first things that we do is to make one tag as form. In Visual Studio, if I write form and press tab, it will create form tag for me and it will add action attribute. Also, there is another attribute that by default its value is get, but you can define it, and it's method. In this video, I will explain about method and action very shortly because it is beyond the scope of this video and you don't need to know about it in the HTML section. But I'm giving you one clue, so in the future, when you learn the more advanced video, you will understand that how to use this method and where this method is coming from. We have different type of the method. These methods are the way that we are sending information and data to the backend. We have get method, post method, patch method, put method, delete method. What is action? Action in fact will be the endpoint that our data will be sent to it. In the backend, there will be one URL that is waiting for this credential and information. For example, when user is submitting the login form, this information must be sent into the backend, validate there, and then the response will be returned back to the front. What we put in the action is endpoint that is responsible for validating and doing some logics on the data that we are sending by form. As this tutorial is only for HTML, so I will not explain more than this about action and method, and even I will remove them because we don't need to even write them. Then inside the form, the first input that I want to explain is text input. So I will write input and I press tab. When I'm pressing tab, my IDE is completing my tag. There is 2 points about this tag. One is that it does not have close tag. So it's like image or BR that does not have close tag. And second thing is this attribute type. This type attribute inside the input is defining that which type of the input is this for. We have different type of the inputs that I will explain all the important inputs here. Now let's check the website. I run the code inside live server, and as you can see, one input is added here and I can write text in it. This text can be name, surname, username, or any text that we want to get from the user side. This type attribute is one required attribute, but there are some attributes that I will explain here and usually you need to use in your form and in your input. One of these attributes that is not just only for input is ID. I will name it name. You can name it whatever, but the point is that it must be unique in one single page. So if I'm giving ID name to this input, I cannot give this ID to any other tag. And another thing that is important is that ID attribute is not only for the input. Even I can give ID to this header. And it can be any name. The only point is that it must be unique. What is ID? ID have different usage. One of the usage that I already explained is that it will give one unique name to the tag, and we can use it for selecting that tag. That selecting can be used inside the CSS. When we reach to the CSS, I will explain you totally that how we can capture one tag by its ID and manipulate its style with CSS. Usually we are not using ID in the CSS. There are other different hooks that we can use, but ID also is one of the selector that we can use for CSS. Another usage of the ID is JavaScript. By using ID, we can reach to one tag, to one HTML tag using JavaScript in that tag. Also, JavaScript is not in the scope of this video, but I have video regarding the JavaScript, and you can follow that video, and after finishing this HTML, you can learn that JavaScript. Another usage that ID of the input have is connecting this input to one label. First, I will explain you what is label. Each input can have one small explanation that is connected to that input. Here I will write label, and this label tag have one attribute that it's for. Whatever I have inside the ID, it must be same inside the for attribute. So here I have ID name, and I will write for name. And inside the content part between the starting tag and the ending tag of the label, I will write the text that I want to show inside the web page. So here I will write first name. If we go to the website, we can see that first name, and if I'm clicking on this input, I can have some text there. This action that when I'm clicking, the border of this input will become blue by default, and I can type on it. It's called focus inside the HTML. But the point is that when you are using for and ID and you are connecting one label to one input, by clicking on that label, that input will be focused and you can type inside that input also. So the way that we are connecting one label to input is that we are putting same value in for attribute of label that we put for the ID of that input. So if the ID value and for value for one label and one input be same, this label and input will be connected to each other. The next input that I want to explain is email input. So I will put BR tag that we explained in previous section to make one break and put some space between this input. I will create one label. Inside the for, I can put whatever I want, but it must be same value that I put for ID of that input. So here I will write email. Here I will put email as text. It's the text that we are showing inside the website. And I will create my input, and the type will be email. Also, I am defining ID as email. This ID must be unique and same as we are putting for value. Let's put another BR to add more space. If we check the website, this email is added, and also here I can write the text, but there is one main difference between type text and the type email. And the difference is that, first of all, if we try to fill up this form inside the mobile, it will show us a special keyboard that have @ symbol and more easier required symbol that is for email in compare of the text. And second thing is that this input will have validation by itself, one simple validation that it does not require us to do anything, and it is validating the value to be email, not any type of the text. The next input that I want to explain is password. So let's add 2br for spacing, one label. This label is for password. I write here as text password. I will have input and the type of the input will be password. Also, the ID of this field must be same as the name that we put for attribute, password. What is this password for? This password more or less is like text input, by this difference that when user is typing something inside this input, it will show only a star. So if you are entering your password inside a public place, other will not be able to understand what you are typing there. So if I type here, it will show as a star. Before we go more forward and I explain about other inputs, I would like to explain about two other attributes that is general for all the input. The first attribute that I want to explain is placeholder. What is placeholder? If you check the website, right now these inputs are empty and nothing is written inside. When you define placeholder for one input, before user type anything inside this input, that text will be exist, but immediately after entering the first character, it will be removed automatically. And also, if you delete all the things that you have inside the input, it will show that text again. Next attribute that I want to explain you is name attribute. Name attribute have two usage. One usage is that when we are sending this data, form data for the backend using the action and method, this data will have some naming, some key and some value. In fact, we are sending this data as JSON. I will not explain about this part because it is much more advanced than this tutorial scope, but very shortly, if I want to say, all the input must have name to be able to send data to the backend. This name can be any key. It does not matter to be same as it is in the ID or it is in the placeholder or anything. So here I will put name as name, name as email, and name as password. So when we are submitting this form, when we are sending this data to the backend, the value that we have put in inside this input will be as password. The data that we are putting in this input will be as email, and the data that we are putting inside the first input will be as name. And the backend can read this information by this name. It's the first. Another usage that this name have is grouping the input. For example, when we want to make radio input, the radio button that you can select only one between few options, we use this name to tell HTML that all of these radio button are same and only one of them must be selected. To make it clear, let's make a group of radio button and explain it in the website. To do that, first I will make one paragraph tag, and here I will write select your gender. Then I will create one input and the type will be radio. It needed to have one ID that I will name it Gen1. It will need one name that I will name it gender, and it will have one value that it will be the value that will be sent for backend. Here I will write male. Then I will create one label for it. It is for Gen1, and as a text I will write male. If you check the website, you have one radio button that its text is male, and when I'm clicking on this label it will be selected, or if I click on this radio it will be selected. So I will make two other very quickly by copy and paste. I will change this ID to Gen2, also this 4 to Gen2. The value will be female, and another one as Gen3, other, and other. What is important here is that the name value for all of these three input is same. It's gender. And it is telling my browser only one of these input must be selected. Here I have other, female, and male. If I click on male, it will be selected, but by clicking on other, this male will be deselected and other will be selected. So the key point here is that when the name of three radio button input is same, only one of them can be selected. Also, I explained about the value. Value is another attribute that it can be used in other input also. It is general in other input also. And if we define value in another input, let me define it in email, for example, to be seenable test@gmail.com. The difference with placeholder, it is the text that is typed already here, and user must delete it and then start typing. In the radio input, this field is required. So you have to define the value, and this value will be sent for the backend. Dropdown also is like radio, but the difference is that it is taking less place and you can show more option with occupying less space. So inside the dropdown, you will have few different options and you can pick one of them. To create one dropdown, the first input that must be created is select. So first I will make one label and I will put it age, and here I will write your age. Then I will make one select tag, and by pressing tab it will give me name and ID. So the name will be the key that we are sending for backend. It will be age, and the ID must be same as we put for label, age. As you can see, this select tag have a start tag and end tag, and the reason is that inside the drop-down or select, for each option we must make another tag with option name. So inside this select I will write option, and it will give me value. Value inside the select and option is required also, and it will be the value that we are sending for backend. It does not matter what kind of text we have between the two option tag. What that we are sending for backend is the things that we have inside the value. So here I will write 0 to 10, and here I will write child. Another option I will write 11 to 19. I will write teen for teenager, and the last option is 20 plus, that is adult. Let's make the first character also big, and now let's check the website. As you can see, we have your age and we have three options to be selected, and only one of them can be selected. Next tag that I want to explain is text area. The text area is using for big amount of the text that we want to send to the backend. So if we have big amount of the text like biography, so this biography of that person will be sent by text area. By writing text area, I will have name and I will have ID. So the name will be bio and the ID also will be bio. Also I will make one label for it and it will be for bio. And your bio as text of my label. As you can see here, my text area have this possibility to change the size. This size can be modified by CSS and we will explain about it, but there is also another way to change this size with HTML. To do that, we are using calls. For example, here I put 40 and we are using row. It's number of the column by default and it's number of the rows for this text area that we are showing here. As much as this number is increasing, the default size of this text area will increase. And to prevent this issue, I will put one br after label, so it will be up there. The next input that I want to explain is file. We are using file for sending some file for the back. For example, you need to upload one image, one Excel file, one file to be sent to the backend, some MP3 video or anything. To create file input, we write input and the type will be file and it also need name, that its name I will put it image. It need ID, that I will put file, and I will create a label for it that the for value must be same as it is in the ID file. Upload image. Here the upload image input is added, and when I'm clicking on the file, it is showing select file, that I can select one file and the name of the file will be shown here. There is one point that I need to mention here when I explained about the file input. When you have file input, you need to change the default encryption type for your form. To do that, we need to add one attribute to the form. Its name is enctype and it have 3 different values. And when we have file input and we want to send file, we have to change its value. We have to select the value multi-part form data as encrypt type. So when the front end wants to send this information to the backend, it is encrypting it. And the way that form with input must be encrypted is different with the forms that does not have any file input. If you do not put form data as encryption type, your file will not be sent to the backend. The next and the last input that I want to explain in this tutorial, and I believe that these inputs are the most important inputs that you need, and you don't need any more inputs in this level that you are, is submit. To create submit input, you will write input and the type will be submit. The submit input need value, that this value will be the text that we are showing inside that button. Submit form. Here the submit form is added, and if I click on it, as you can see, all the values that is in here is added to the URL. The reason is that the method that is defined by default is get method, and in the get method, this data as parameter will be sent. And as we did not define action, the default will be considered same endpoint that we already are inside it. If the endpoint is different for action, we have to define that action. Now what I want to explain is another attribute that we can use inside the input, and it is helping us inside the validation, and it's required. If I add required here, it does not need any value, and by default its value is true. And then I come here and try to submit the form, it will give me one error. It will give me one warning that this field is required and I have to write the name. when I write the name and I click on submit, it is working. But if I don't put name here, it will not work. Another point that I mentioned inside the validation is email. If you remember, we defined the type of this input as email. So now if I write some name here and I click on submit form, it will give me one warning that you need @ symbol because it's email and this text is not similar like email. So I have to put that @ and it will be submittable. Okay everybody, thanks for watching this video. Until now, you learned all the required tags related to the form and you are able to make minimum 80 to 90% of the forms that you can see in different websites. In the next video, I will start explaining about CSS and giving a style and beautifying our website. So don't forget to click on subscribe and follow my videos to learn about CSS. Thanks for watching and goodbye.